Hey everyone, it's the host of All Across America, Marco Vig, jumping in for a few seconds before the show to thank y'all for listening, to let you know that I want to hear from you. Tell me what you like about the show, and send me your suggestions too. Follow us on Instagram at AllXAmerica, or visit the website, allacrossamerica.net, and you can use our contact page there. If you want to support us, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/allacrossamerica. Try to respond personally to everyone who reaches out, so say hello. All right, on with the show. Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. Let's give it a shot. So thank you for joining, and I wanted to bring you on because I really liked your background, which could be, depending on people's opinion, the best or the worst background for a matchmaker. So you're come from a process improvement background. Your husband's a divorce attorney. I'm like, sounds good to me. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, how you got into the business.
Yeah, and it's just a different perspective, maybe. So I actually got into the business when I was 16, really. Wow. When I put together my first couple that ended up getting married. Okay. And that was my first successful match. And I never really thought about matchmaking as as a job or anything, right, until way later, when I was with my husband, who happens to be a divorce attorney, and we were always talking about relationships and what works and what doesn't. Okay. And he would see a lot of the same things happening over and over again. Okay. And it was just astounding to me, because it's like, oh, why didn't they think about these things ahead of time? Right. They should have thought about it a long time ago. Yeah. And so that's when I just have started to kind of put it together, and I also had a bunch of single friends, and so I'm like, all right, I'll turn this hobby of mine into really into a business. And initially I just did it for fun, and then eventually started taking on paid clients.
Okay, all right. Are the couple that you matched when you were 16, are they still together?
They were, until he passed away. So
I'm sorry.
But I mean, it was a while ago. Not that long, but it was a while ago. So, but yeah, they stayed together until then. So
that's great. Cool. That's great. And so tell me, one quick question: does your husband ever make referrals to your service?
Yeah. Actually, he has worked with one of my clients on a custody type issue.
Wow.
So parenting type issue, but he hasn't done any divorces for my clients.
That's good. I'm glad he's doing referrals from one side of referrals only, and not the other way. So
right.
So tell me about some of the things that he saw, that he has seen in his practice, and how they've kind of matched up from what you've seen, and how that's kind of inflected upon your way of matching people.
What he saw, well, like, people would get married in their very different religious groups, or maybe one person is an atheist and the other one is a Muslim, and then it's not so much a problem when you're dating, or maybe even just married, but once you have kids, and then how you're going to raise those kids, that becomes a big issue. Another one is around kids, like people that get married and one wants to have kids and the other one doesn't, and you would think they would have had that conversation before, but they don't. Or people change, of course. They might change their opinion, but a lot of times they're just failing to have those basic conversations. And it's just astounding to me, like, how little people know about each other. That end up getting married, they're not really as close as you would think they should be.
My wife, through the pastor that married us, we went to marriage counseling for pre-marriage counseling.
That's awesome.
It was great. We did 3 or 4 sessions, and they asked some, and it was a very non-denominational, not really a religious approach, but more just asking those foundational questions, like, you would think, you're entering into this it's a vow, it's a contract with somebody, and to not know if they want to have kids or not, and or maybe those expectations are that they'll come around to it, years down the road, but
I'll change. Right.
I mean, it's so hard.
That's awesome that you guys did that, and I think everybody should. It should be a prerequisite for
Yeah.
marriage, and it's
Yeah.
kind of what we do for our clients too.
Right.
So when we meet with people, we interview them, we ask
Okay.
them, we have like, I don't know, 100 questions that we can ask people
Really? Okay.
to get to know them, and but really it comes down to matching people based on values to make sure that they're aligned, because your values are who you are, and you
Yeah.
can't be with somebody that butts up against your values. If
Right.
you, because it will inevitably lead to major conflict down the road. And
Yeah. Yeah.
they always say, you can't see red flags with rose-colored goggles. So when
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
are
I could definitely
they're in
see.
love, and so they ignore all of those red flags.
Right, that honeymoon stage, and yeah,
Mhm.
the lust clouds things. You mentioned, an atheist and a Muslim, and there are those value pieces, and not to say one approach to life is better or worse than the other, but I've often it was later on in my life that I learned what opposites attract really mean.
Mhm.
And it's not about values. And I think
Right.
I had this, misconception that, oh, it is about these, two totally divergent lifestyles or people. And it's really about that complementary personality relationship,
Mhm.
the square and the free spirit, the talkative and the reserved person. Have you found that in your practice with your clients?
Well, in my practice, and I'm living it really,
Okay.
to be quite
Okay.
frank, my husband and I couldn't have come from more different backgrounds,
Tell me.
but we are aligned with how we like see the world in a lot of
Okay.
ways, and
Yeah.
aligned with our values. But
Okay.
I'm from northern Minnesota. He was born in the Middle East,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
yeah, so where I'm from, it's very different than where he's from. And then even our religions are different, but
Yeah.
we still like we see things the same way.
Okay.
So regardless of what label you put on it, we still have the same values, and I think that's what's most important, really. And that's what's been, at least for me, that I've seen success.
And how long have y'all been married for?
10 years this May.
Wow. All right. Okay. Wow. That's great. And you had such a good thing that you decided to spoil it with having a boy. Congratulations again.
Thanks. Well, he's pretty fun.
Yeah, I bet.
He's our little guy. So
That's great.
yeah, it's
And
been
how
fun.
how is how would you say your relationship has changed, as a married couple, having been, together, just the two of you for so many years, and now you've got this third special person in the mix.
Well, it enables us to see each other in a different perspective,
Okay. Yeah.
and of course, right, because we're being stretched. We're not our normal our normal selves anymore. Like we talked a little bit about this right before we started, and that he's a lot more patient than I ever
Right.
imagined he would be.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. And then he
Yeah.
sees the very nurturing side of me with
Yeah.
him. And I mean, you, of course, you just have all the basic stuff. Like you have less time to do things, and
Yeah.
you're definitely being pushed with your patience with when the screaming child is mad about getting his diaper changed or whatever. So there's those kinds of things. But they say that kids will make you more patient, and I'm a believer in that too.
Yeah, I can't believe it, because patience is definitely not my virtue, and it's
Mm,
it's been a big help. I mean, I'm still working on it, but I'm surprised how far and how quickly I've come since becoming
yeah.
a dad. So
Well, and I'm like noise sensitive, so
okay,
loud noises drive me crazy, and he
right.
is very loud. So I need noise canceling headphones to be around.
Probably. Yeah, it'll be tough being a mom to a toddler. But
Oh
hey,
my
maybe
god.
that's something that you'll grow into as well. You never know.
Yeah.
So before I ask you how you match other folks, tell me how you match with your husband. How did you meet?
We actually met at a restaurant, and
Okay.
I was there with a girlfriend of mine, and we were actually discussing her upcoming divorce that she was
Oh boy.
planning on,
Okay.
yeah, filing. And so we're kind of strategizing, talking through everything, and these guys came up, and they're kind of hitting on her, and
Right.
I'm the bitch friend that's like annoyed that these guys are there because I just wanted to talk to her,
Right.
and she's about to be single, so she's liking the attention, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But so I go to them, you guys, you can't hit on her yet. She's still married. And they go, oh, well, our buddy over here is a divorce attorney. So they went over and they got their buddy and brought him over. And so then we just started asking him a million questions. And then she didn't really, she just hadn't had a lot of experience with financials and stuff like that. So I ended up talking to him afterwards. And then we ended up just talking more and more and getting close and then having coffee and went from there basically.
Excellent. Wow. All right. Did he ever represent your friend, or she had?
He did. And then, funny enough, when he gave her papers to sign for her divorce finalization, that's when he told her that he was about to propose.
Oh
so
my!
It was 2 years later.
So this was like a 2-for-1 special for him. I mean, he got a client and a wife.
Exactly. And that's what we always say. And he always says that he cleaned up because his buddies were like texting him while he was talking to us, and they're like, okay, now F off and get away. Because he basically came in and took the women away.
Right. He was just supposed to be the wingman, and he ended up.
But he always says, well, if you just hang back and not be so aggressive.
That's right.
It's funny.
Tell me about the business and how you find clients, how clients come to you, and what you said. There's like 100 question list that you go through. So tell me a little bit about that, and just maybe you can kind of walk me through a journey.
Yeah. So people find us generally online or through one of their friends or somebody that they know has used us. And they will go to our website and just fill out the profile form and schedule a time to meet with one of our matchmakers. And then from there, we will interview them. We set up a Zoom meeting to interview them, learn more about them, and determine if we can match them. Because we are a boutique agency. We're not like, there's some services that are like, I call them mills, where they just throw people through the grinder and throw them out on a ton of dates, whereas we're more of a boutique. And when we get a client, we assign a team to that client's case, where we are have different people doing various things to ultimately find that person. So we have a recruiter, we have people that are just interviewing people, finding matches. And it's about, a lot of times it comes down to, of course, when we make matches, it's about making sure that we're aligned on what the client's preferences are and the match's preferences and their values and stuff. But a lot of times it comes down to a feeling. Like I just made a match the other day where I was talking to her and I'm like, she'd be a great compliment to one of our clients. And because I know his personality and what he likes. Now, does everything line up on there? I mean, they're both pretty flexible people. So I think it just will ultimately come down to chemistry if it's going to work out or not. But I got just a vibe that they could click potentially. So we'll see, hopefully.
Do you work with mostly female or mostly male, or a mix of clients on both sides of the?
Yeah, it's 50-50.
Okay. And so, let's say you've got like the primary client who, we'll say a woman in this instance approaches you and they want to find somebody, how are you working with them? And then I guess you've got, for lack of a better term, a stable of potential matches that you could match them with. And how are you trying to coach the matches? How does that work in that relationship, and, trying to kind of play both sides of the coin?
Yeah, well, we will basically give them some information about the other person, give them a profile and prep them for the date. And different people might get some coaching ahead of time. So we have a couple of different date coaches that we work with, and different programs that we have for people also. And then it's knowing what to say, or to prepare somebody. So like, for example, I've had in the past clients that were really nervous or shy or something, and or somebody that talks a lot, and I might let the other person know, like, oh, this is just how they are to begin with, and
Right.
when
Okay.
they get more comfortable. Because that first date, I don't even really feel like it's a real date. The first date, it's
Right.
just
Yeah.
you're getting to know the person, because people can change so much once they start feeling more comfortable
That's
and warming
true.
up to
That's so
someone.
true. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, one time I met a guy at a networking event, and he was kind of nerdy and just like nervous, didn't have the best eye contact, and it was kind of funny, but I'm like, oh, it was endearing. And I said, okay, let's meet for coffee, because I wanted to interview him
Okay.
for one of our clients to see if maybe he was a match. And the guy that showed up for coffee was completely different than the guy that I met at the networking event.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
I went back on into my notes. I'm like, who is this, the same person that I thought it was?
Right.
Because I'm like, maybe I'm missing something,
Yeah.
or like have a
Yeah.
mistake for somebody else, because the person I met was totally different than this guy. Was like Rico. He was suave
Wow.
that day when I met with him. Like, he was a lot more confident, but he was probably just more comfortable because it was us one on one versus like standing with a bunch of people.
I'm the same way. I hate networking events. I love talking to people one-on-one or small groups, and
Right.
it's hard to find my spot in a networking. I'm kind of like walking around, like grasping
Yeah.
onto my drink,
Yeah.
but one-on-one is very different.
It's
Um,
awkward.
so how has it, you said you do Zoom interviews as a kind of the intake. How has that worked? And I guess, we're in a different world now than we were prior to 2020, but do you find it helpful to see people in person at times? And, I mean, let's say somebody's just like a really sweet guy and has got so many great qualities, but they're kind of schlubby, and it's maybe harder to see on Zoom, and you might have some style tips, or, do you
Yeah.
have that as part of the service?
Yeah. Coaching and feedback. So we might get feedback from his date.
Okay.
And if she said something like that, we could relay the feedback, and in
Okay.
a helpful way. We
Yeah.
want to be helpful and not harmful. I mean, sometimes people can be pretty harsh in their feedback.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's subjective too. Like,
That's true.
somebody might say somebody's attractive, and other people would think they're not attractive. So it's just like, it's beauty's in the, or everything's in the eye of the beholder.
I mean, it's so true that, I mean, one, I think it's important that you all are acting as the filter, but and the filter of, maybe toning down the message, but the filter of also being able to showcase the message in a way that makes more sense, in that just because somebody may not be attracted to them doesn't mean they're necessarily not attracted to many other people. And I
Right.
think that's
Everybody
right.
everyone has their type, and their past experiences have made their reality today. It's not like saying, okay, that thing behind you, it's round.
Right.
There's no subjectivity to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a round thing. Yeah, but
Yeah, you do too.
but it's, yeah, that's the thing, is you can't take it all personally, and
Right. That's so
and
true.
that's what we will coach people on
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And in terms of people's selection, or, I'm sure they've got this idealized person in mind. It's almost like you see these job descriptions for a job posting, and, they want person that
Yeah.
speaks 5 languages, has top secret clearance, and, a master's in electrical engineering. And
Mhm.
there's no person on earth that can really fulfill those criteria. How
Mhm.
how are you working with clients that may have unreasonable expectations, or maybe almost in subconsciously setting up themselves for failure because they're afraid of maybe that commitment, and they're trying to create somebody that just doesn't exist? And how do you try to coach
Yeah.
them towards a happier medium, I guess?
Well, I mean, we try to do that upfront, and just to set expectations,
Yeah.
because I've had people come in with a list, a pages long list of
I
everything
bet.
that they're looking for,
Right.
and I think, okay, well, this is why you're single, because I
Yeah.
and I have set up people with each other that they met everything on the list,
Wow.
but it wasn't a good fit, or they
Wow.
didn't have that
Wow.
chemistry. So, and not to mention, like, if, okay, say somebody thinks they need somebody that's 6 feet, if a lady wants someone that's 6 feet tall,
Of course.
and
Right.
you tell her, okay, well, would you turn down Tom Cruise? And no, probably not,
There you go.
because you think he's a good looking guy. Yeah, well, he's like 5'7". So you really no. So really, what it comes down to is people are willing to throw away their list if they find somebody else,
Okay.
somebody that is a good fit in other ways. But it's we try to get them to be open-minded to that and
Okay.
see past their list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise they just get fixated on a list, and it doesn't work. It never works. If somebody is so like, I need somebody that's Ivy League, da, 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 and they're not willing to compromise,
Right.
well, what is a relationship? It's all about
It
compromise.
is. That's so true. That's so true.
Mhm.
I mean, have you turned away clients in some instances and saying that, maybe you might need to work on yourself first before you're ready to find somebody to share your life with?
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, and especially if they're, like, newly widowed or divorced or
I
something
see.
like that, or they're so fixated on their list and they're not willing to come off of it, and
Yeah, yeah,
then, like, yeah, well, I can't work with you then
yeah.
because we're in the business of creating relationships, not making humans. We're not
Right, right, right. True.
I'm not a magician, I'm a
Yeah, I
matchmaker.
mean that's so true. And you can't create this, idealized person out of thin air and you know,
Mhm.
only can
And
only
Bradley Cooper is not interested in you. Or Giselle, now that she's single, like, she's still
Right,
not gonna
right.
do
So
it.
did you get some clients that bring in like celebrity photos or celebrity crushes and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be helpful. I also like to see pictures of who they've dated in the past
okay,
and, relation like a picture of them with their person,
okay.
and, not just people they found on Instagram, like, "Oh, I date somebody like her." I'm like, "She
Right,
doesn't even look like her."
right.
So
No, that's right. She's got so many filters on her face.
right,
Yeah.
right. Well, find a real person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, talking about Instagram and social media, I was just thinking like, let's say, not even, within recent history, 100 years ago, people might only encounter a handful of folks, that
Mhm.
could be potential suitors. And, these days it's like you can just swipe over and over and over again. And there's almost this like, tyranny of choice. And that
Right.
you can kind of, select for this so-called perfect person, even if you're in a big city. Have you had to like really coach people off of that? Have you seen that shift in
Mhm.
your business and client base over the years as online matchmaking or I should say
Right.
dating websites become more prevalent?
So one thing that people, I think that what they're realizing, if they are truly looking for a relationship, the apps are not where it's at. Like,
Okay.
they even say it on their disclosures, like, or at the bottom of their app. It's like, this is an entertainment site.
Interesting.
It's
Okay.
not. It's
Okay.
not really, and it's not in the app's best interest for people to be successful and
I
to
mean,
be in a
that's true.
relationship.
That's so true.
You know, because
Yeah.
they're all about keeping people,
Subscriptions. Yeah.
on, and yeah, and keep paying month after month after month.
Right.
And it's, yeah, so, and you don't know people's intentions on all those sites. They can have all
Yeah.
kinds of different intentions, what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Some people are just looking for attention and they are just, or validation, and they will never even go out on a date. They just want people to, whatever, like their profile. Some people just want to hook up, and then there's some that actually do want a relationship.
Yeah.
So,
And where in people's dating life and their life in general are they when they come to you? I mean, does it run the gamut from
mhm.
folks who've just been kind of single for a while and spinning their wheels to you mentioned folks who are widowed or recently divorced?
Yeah, a lot of times they're people that we have a lot of divorcees or people that are busy executives
Okay,
and they don't want to put their profile online, and they certainly don't have time to sit there
I
and
see.
go through apps and
Yeah,
like message back and forth and
right.
play games like that.
Yeah,
They would just rather hire somebody. They're used to hiring people to get things done.
yeah,
So that's what
fair enough.
they do. They outsource that stuff because it's not fun and it's very time consuming, and you can waste a lot of time going on bad dates with people that
Right.
are not anything like what they say they are or how they
Okay.
portray themselves in their photos and stuff.
So walk me through the typical life cycle of, let's say, a successful match. So, let's say, a client approaches you and they want to meet somebody special. How many dates do they tend to go on until they get to a second date and a third date? And, at what point are you like, you're free, you go off and,
Yeah.
live your life together? How does that work? And do you have
Um,
parameters or,
I
suggestions?
mean, we only introduce people to one person at a time because
Okay.
we want them to be focused on that one person that they're
Okay.
dating
Wow.
and
That's great.
get to know that person.
Yeah.
Because if you have that mentality that the apps offer, like where people will be literally on a date and then go to the bathroom and they're like checking their
Yeah.
Match
Yeah.
account. Like
Yeah.
we want people that actually want relationships and are
Okay.
willing to invest in that person
Yeah.
that they like. But if
Okay.
they're like, "Oh, I like her, but I want to see what else is out there," and it's not like you're buying a car. You need
Yeah.
you get what you put in at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
Right. Right. So they've got that date one. Like, what do you suggest? In terms of like location, setting,
Yeah.
like should
Yeah.
they kiss after the first date? Where what do you recommend?
Well, we try to get people to do activity
Okay.
dates. It depends on the client and if they
Right.
want to or not, of
Yeah.
course. But it's always fun to do something. And it could be just going to a sporting event or,
Right.
maybe getting ice cream and going for a
Okay.
walk or something
Yeah.
like that. But we try to get people to not just be in an interview where they're sitting across the table,
Right. Right.
quizzing each other,
Right.
and actually having some sort of interaction can be
Okay.
more beneficial. At least, I mean, if not on the first date, at least the second date. And yeah, that way they get to see people in a more natural setting, I think.
Okay.
And I think it's important to change it up because when you see people in different settings, you can see different sides to
That's
them.
so true. Yeah. Yeah. Whether they're dinner or just going to a sports game or going on a hike and so they progressed I guess the second, the third date, like when do you recommend they, I don't know, bring them back to their place or, do you have parameters in place, no intimacy before or what do you recommend for folks?
Well, yeah, you can kiss on the first date. That's fine. I recommend, not hooking up on the first date, especially if you want a real relationship.
Okay.
It's important to,
Yeah.
take your time, get to know that person, build
Yeah.
a real connection, and truly
Okay.
bond with them
Okay.
before going going to that next
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
So, and of course, I mean, that's not what everybody wants, but
Right.
I think if your goal is ultimately to have a bonded relationship, and
Yeah.
that's what we specialize in, then yeah, that takes time, and don't consummate the relationship right away.
Have
So,
you have you noticed that? I mean, it's almost like I think things that tend to get hot and heavy too soon can fizzle out
mhm.
faster. Have you noticed that, the folks that have the slow build up tend to have a longer lasting relationship?
I think statistically, yes, that's true
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I mean, and there's biology is involved in it, right? Because I mean, I don't need to go into the details, but it's a proven science that people will tend to be more interested longer if and then if they're interested, they're spending more time together, they're growing their connection, they get to know each other more,
Right.
and they're truly bonding. So it's and that's to me, I think is one of the most fun parts about the relationship is that beginning when you're courting
Right.
and getting to know each other and getting excited because
It
oh
is,
you
and the
held
butterfly.
hands or
Yeah.
yeah. And if you just go and get naked and jump in the sack right away, it takes away a lot of that excitement.
It does.
And
Yeah, kind of.
um, yeah, and it's not truly connection. I don't think compared to if you wait, say, a month or two after you've been on several dates or
Okay.
something like that. So
Do you have any rules or suggestions that you make for daters? And I've heard a couple of them and some make a little bit more sense than others, and some are just kind of pop culture tidbits. But I've heard don't plan in advance any longer than the relationship has lasted. So, if you have a cabin in the woods somewhere and you've only been dating for a month, you don't want to talk about doing something next 2 months from then. Does that make sense?
well, I think if the relationship is headed that way and that's your intention is that you want
Okay.
to be together in 2 months from now and you see, then yeah, you should talk
Okay.
about making plans in the future. It
Yeah.
shows your intent, but but also I think it's important to understand the other person, where their mindset is. If they
Okay.
told you up front, hey, I don't want anything serious, I'm just looking for fun, and
Right.
then they probably meant it, because that's
Yeah.
not an easy conversation to have.
Yeah.
And then some people think, well, I'll change their mind, and then you're gonna freak them out if you tell them, well, we're gonna go on this trip in 2 months from now. Well, if you want a real relationship, you probably shouldn't be with that person to begin
Right. Right. Another one I've heard is don't name the puppy until you bring them home from the pound. And, sometimes people get almost infatuated with folks or the idea of somebody too soon. And they tell all their friends, like,
with. Yeah,
God, Sarah, she's amazing. And, every other word out of their mouth
yeah.
is about Sarah. What are your thoughts on that? And, the slow unveiling and, again, the pacing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's smart. I know people do get excited, but I know this one girl that she has a new boyfriend, I swear, like every couple of months. And
Right.
then she blasted out on social media, like all these pictures of her and her boyfriend, and
Right.
they're traveling. Like, it's insert dude here. I swear, like you just take his head off and put a different ones on, because
Right.
her profile just is constantly like revolving, or it's a different person every couple of months. And
Right.
I'm
Right.
embarrassed for her, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like,
Yeah.
it makes her not look very bright. But anyway, yeah, I think it's important to recognize that, and just also be private. I mean, keep some things private,
Yeah.
right? It's,
I
you
think
don't
so.
need to announce to the world. Like, this was actually the first time that I've talked about my son, even
Oh,
in
wow.
any, like, yeah, I never talk to about him, or like most people don't even know it on social
Right.
media or anything.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
have anything about him
Yeah.
out there. So it's kind of funny. Or like, my story about how I met my husband. Like, I mean, I will tell people that I know and talk
Yeah.
to about that, but I think it's important to have some level of privacy, and just
Yeah.
own the people that need to push it out there and like publicize everything that they're doing. They're looking for something else. Like, they need some kind of validation or
I think
attention
so.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I think so. I think so. And how about in terms of, age matching? I've heard in this one gets more into the silliness category, and I'm sure you've heard this one. Half your age plus 7 for the guy. And anything
yeah,
below that is considered too young. And for instance, I'm 44, so 22 plus 7 would be 29.
29.
Well,
Well, I actually always say, like, I think 15 years, you start to stretch the rubber band
okay,
pretty tight. Like, it's gonna snap. Anything beyond
interesting.
15 years is,
Yeah,
like, you're just generations apart.
it's
And
true. Yeah.
yeah, that becomes pretty weird. And but I mean, I've seen it work. But there's pros and cons to every relationship. So
Yeah.
I would say, if you can make it work and you have a good connection, and if that's the only thing that is the issue, then maybe it's okay to look
Yeah.
past it.
Yeah.
But
I
um,
I I
you
have to
start
tell
to
my
wonder
go ahead.
why. Okay, you start to question, okay, why? Why are you not dating somebody? It's one thing if they're like maybe 10 years apart,
Sure.
or even 15 years apart, but when somebody's like 20, 30 years apart, like, okay, there's some kind of motive,
Yeah, there's that validation piece that
or
comes into play
yeah,
again.
there's something that
Yeah.
else that they're after. Which, okay, so if we're talking about like people that want to date somebody that's older because they have more money and they're more established, I always say, like, people are wanting security in relationships. So it could be emotional security, it
Wow.
could be physical security, or I mean, financial is
Sure.
another form of security. So
Yeah.
maybe that's the most important thing to them. So, and it just happens to come from somebody that's a lot older than them.
That's
I don't know, to
interesting.
each their own. Like,
Yeah.
we're not, I mean, that's my opinion, but every to each their own. And
I mean, it sounds like you've given some real thought to this approach and process and understanding, a number is a number, but why are they looking for that number? And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, if for them, if it does mean some sort of sense of security, as you said it, then maybe they are
well,
looking at it in good faith and, not
yeah.
just after, the wrong thing.
Well, and or maybe they are, but
Yeah,
and then there's trade-offs too because he's getting something from her, right?
sure, of course, yeah.
And or him, I should say, or she's getting something from him. But or I've seen not necessarily with my clients, but I've seen guys that want to date really young women.
Okay.
And it's because they want to be able to control them because they're young and still
Oh, wow.
they could start to kind of form their opinions. Because an older woman would be like, "Shut the hell up! Like you don't know what you're
Right,
talking
right,
about."
right.
Whereas a younger one would be like, "Oh, okay, yeah,
Oh,
he knows best," and
yeah.
yeah, and so they can sometimes manipulate a younger person more easily,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
yeah, and so then that's like a Peter Pan kind of syndrome, I think.
Yeah.
Too.
I like the 15-year scenario. My wife and I are 8 years apart, so I'm 8 years older than her. So I'll have to tell her that we're only meet halfway there.
Oh,
So, but
you're
my youngest brother is 7 years younger than me, and so it works. It always has. I quite frankly I haven't really noticed it until now that I've gotten into my 40s. I'm thinking about like retirement. I'm like, oh my God, I'll be retired before her. That's the first time in years that like the thought of like ages have come up. So,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Well, my husband and I are 10 years apart,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
the only issue is like music taste.
Okay. Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah. She's definitely of a different subgeneration than I am. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah, I was in college, and I guess he was. When you think going back those many years, when you're in your
Mhm.
younger, teenage and preteen years, then it seems like a really long span. But as an adult, it hasn't really come up very much at all. So
Right. Yeah. Well, your lifestyles are similar, so
yeah, I think
if
so.
she was in college and you're in your career, then it's kind of it can be weird and
Yeah,
different.
that's true.
So
That's very true. She was 23, I was 31. So
yeah,
she was, uh,
I
she
mean,
was
or when she's like in her early 20s, just
yes.
exploring the bar scene, and he has
Yeah.
his AARP card.
Right.
It's a different generations for sure.
Yeah, that might be stretching a little bit too far.
Mhm.
So tell me, and I've seen this before, and I saw another interview with a matchmaker years ago. Have you been to, besides friends and family that you've made matches for, have you been invited to weddings?
Oh yeah.
You have. Well, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great.
Um, it's I was at a wedding one time where they actually the maid of honor did a speech, and she told everyone the whole process and
Oh my
everything, and
goodness.
how I set them up, and she was basically helping the bride to not have anxiety the night before, and like they went into like talked all about it, and the whole time I was getting so embarrassed because I'm like, where's the story going? Because
Right, right, right,
you never
right.
know. But yeah, it was all good.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I mean, do you feel that, because of social media and matching sites, that people are much more open to telling folks how they've met, and that has inflected on your business as well, that people are like, yeah, we met through a matchmaker, and what do you
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, but a lot of times not because they don't want people to know that they paid for a service because they
sure.
feel like it
Okay.
makes them look like, oh, you had to pay it. But really, it's about finding that right person. And I
Right.
mean, we pay people to clean our houses. We pay
Sure.
people to do all
Yes, of
kinds,
course.
take care
Yeah.
of our children, and
Yeah,
folks
that's
may
true. Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Um, Wow. Yeah, I mean, but people are paying to go on, I don't know, Match.com or whatever these other services. I mean,
Yeah, it was
you know?
more taboo when I started the company, but
Okay,
not as much anymore. But
sure.
I think still, like, in that case, at that wedding, they didn't know, people didn't know I was a matchmaker. They just knew I
Okay.
had set them
Right,
up.
right,
So
right, right.
they just thought I was like a friend of theirs or something.
So tell us more about your company. You're in 40 cities, is that correct? And tell us how you
Well,
got started and
we,
how you've expanded.
yeah, we're nationwide
Okay.
now, and we have clients all across the country, and even some in Canada and Puerto Rico, of
Oh,
course. And
wow.
yeah, and well, a lot of people have houses in different
Sure.
places. There's several places,
Yeah.
so that's how they end up there. But if people are interested in being matched, they can just go to our website. It's lumasearch.com, and Luma
Okay.
stands for luxury matchmaking.
Okay.
And they can fill out the profile form and
Okay.
submit their information. Then they'll be interviewed by a matchmaker and
Okay.
see if we have somebody that we can match them with.
Okay, excellent. So from the time of, reaching out to you all and I don't know, kind of filling out an application online to the first date, how long might that be?
To the first date. Well, I mean, it depends on the client, of course,
Yeah.
right? So if they're really available and ready to go, and we have somebody that we can, oh, I know the perfect match for you, and we'll set them up. Like, it just really, it depends on each of the person's availability, both
Yeah,
people's availability. But
sure.
I mean, I've set up matches after I literally left the meeting and I was thinking about somebody and I called them
Oh,
and
wow.
then set them up for the next day. So
Wow.
yeah.
Excellent.
And
So,
that's not typical, but
yeah.
more realistically, it's like it can take a couple of weeks
Okay.
before we get people.
Which is
We do more, we have a more in-depth process where we do the interview, we have them do personality assessments so they
oh,
can
wow.
learn more about themselves.
Sure.
Different people will have different things, like some clients get a photo shoot, some will get like a date coaching session with
Okay.
one of our coaches. And yeah, we have some other programs. So it kind of depends on the person. So
Great. Okay. So you're able to assess and say, yeah, this person is a little unpolished and may need a little refresher.
yeah, or they might want it,
Sure.
they might say they want that first because they know.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, it's been great having you on. And are there any
Likewise.
questions I haven't asked? Anything more that you'd like to tell
No, this has been an interesting interview. I felt myself getting flushed a couple of times because I
Ah!
don't usually talk about myself so much. I'm usually talking about the business. So
Yeah.
I'm like, this is different, but that's just your questions and your
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always like to know, a lot about the person and their background because I feel like it really speaks to how they run their business or operate their life.
yeah.
And for me, it's always about that backstory, which ends up really being the front story and many times as well. So
Yeah, it's just funny for me because I'm usually the one asking all the
right,
questions.
that's true. That's true. I've kind of put you in the reverse chair. That's very
Yeah,
true.
exactly.
Well, I hope it's been refreshing in a way.
Yeah, well, who doesn't like to talk about themselves? No, I
That's
mean,
right.
a lot of people do. So
That's
it's
right.
just awkward because I feel like I should be asking you that, but that's just not the way this goes. So anyway, but
Well, thanks again for joining, and I wanted to thank you for being so easy to set up a visit. Some folks are like, "Oh my
back
goodness,
and forth,
it's the
back and
back
forth.
and forth," and then they gotta.
Yeah,
Oh, you've
I
been
know.
really great. You made it so easy, and I can see how you've run a smooth and successful expanding business.
Efficiency.
So,
I'm all
that's
about
right.
efficiency,
That's
process
right.
improvement.
That's right. That's
There you
right.
go. There you
That's
go.
right. Well, we've come full circle. April, thank you so much. And we'll end it here.